Jack, Will and Kim could all feel their excitement rising as their hire car weaved its way through the tight, narrow roads, leading them ever closer to Morton House. The house, damn near a manor, as Kimberly would later exclaim, was nestled prettily in the Alpine region, a short drive from Queenstown in New Zealand. Low enough that this time of the year, early February, the trio was unlikely to have to deal with the tedium of snow, but high enough to appreciate the snow's picturesque beauty atop surrounding mountains from afar. It would come as no surprise that Morton House had received nothing but 5-star ratings on the house-sharing app Jack, the mastermind behind the holiday, had used to book their stay. The drive from Christchurch to Queenstown was a long one, and despite having spent most of the day sitting in a car, excluding a brief lunch stop at the breathtakingly blue Tekapo Lake, and a stop at the less breathtaking Countdown, a supermarket chain for supplies, the group was content to stave off adventure for the evening, and instead have a relaxed first night, barbecuing said supplies for dinner, and enjoying a quiet beer or two, along with a round of cards. The conviction of this decision was enforced upon final arrival at Morton House. There was, the trio was sure, never a more wonderful home placed on a house-sharing website. 2 stories tall, a tennis court, a large backyard with raised grassy hill, complete with, much to Kim's delight, wild white rabbits. A brightly coloured sign reading Morton House hanging from chains above the doorway, and large windows giving views from all rooms of the house of the surrounding mountains. As is customary when a group first arrives in a new share house, the travellers immediately began to excitedly tear around their newer environment to discover what their temporary living quarters had to offer. The pantry, the fridge, what they were allowed to eat from them, what the real owners had deemed off limits, how strong the shower was, is there enough toilet paper, how big is the TV, and what channels it had. Where are the bedrooms? How soft are the beds? And who gets first dibs? There was, of course, as in all share homes, the mystery door. A locked-off room, closet, or cupboard that the real owners forbid entry to guests. This was common across all share homes that the trio had stayed during their travels, and was entirely understandable. After all, the owners did actually live in these homes when not being rented out for the weekend, and so it would be naturally expected that they would have private or expensive belongings or memorabilia that they wouldn't want just any random stranger to see or touch. Nevertheless, their polite signage of "No guest entry," "Homeowners only," "Please stay out," and "Locked door" always inspired a joking slew of predictions of what lay within. This was no different from Morton House's private room, no guest access, which led Jack to predict sex dungeon, and Kim to venture embarrassingly large Beatles collection. Will himself did not venture a guess. These locked doors always inspired in him a subtle feeling of unease, brought forth by the unknown. And Morton House's mystery door instilled upon him no exception. First to breakfast the next morning was Jack. The owners had left for guests an assortment of cereals in the pantry, and while Jack himself would never have purchased a breakfast so sugary as Cocoa Pops, he was ecstatic that someone else had made the poor decision for him. He was just pouring a coffee when Will came down from his upstairs bedroom, criticised Jack for his overly sugary choice in breakfast cereal, poured a bowl of Nutri-Grain, and slid into the seat beside him. "This place is great, but I think it has a rat problem," Jack began, sipping on his steaming hot coffee. "I think it was just the wind," suggested Will between shoveling ever-soggy cereal into his mouth. "I could hear metal jangling, so it was probably just the sign out front getting blown around." Just then, Kimberly made her way downstairs. "The mountain air is so fresh," she yelled theatrically. "I've never slept so well," she continued. "Surely you didn't sleep with the windows open," Jack exclaimed with false concern. "Not with last night's wind," he added. "What wind?" queried Kim, unaware of the prior conversation. Jack turned from Kim and, pointing with a cereal cake spoon back to Will, "See? Rats," Jack declared. After breakfast, the trio set out for the Tiki Trail, a steep mountain climb that gives beautiful views of the Queenstown skyline. The weather was amazing, and inspired by witnessing others on their way up the mountain, Kimberly followed this climb by taking part in some bungee jumping. Jack and Will watched from a viewing platform, as jumping from high heights was not their idea of enjoyment. What, however, was their idea of enjoyment were the burgers the travellers enjoyed from Devil Burger, following Kim's daring feat. Once fully satisfied, the three friends returned back to Morton House for their second evening. The night's plans had been that of a Lord of the Rings marathon, inspired by their Rohan-like surroundings, which, while they were unsure were actual film locations from the movies, the trio felt they might as well have been. However, with the weather as good as it was following the first film The Fellowship of the Rings, and with the sun soundly down, the trio decided to put on their warmest clothes, gather up some snacks and blankets, and head up the hill in the backyard for stargazing. The three friends had never quite seen so many stars. Far from the light pollution created by large cities that the travellers were used to, and protected by the natural light-blocking barrier that was the mountain range, the view of the universe beyond would have been perfect were it not for the one small light left on the second floor of the house. "I thought we'd turned off all the lights." "We did." "Well, clearly not," the group bantered, as they went over the house's floor plans in their heads to try to figure out who had left the light on, and so who would have to leave the snug blankets to go and turn it off. "It's Kim's room," Will accused. "No, that's my room there with the big window." "That window is tiny. It must be the bathroom," she retorted. "But the bathroom is on the other side of the hallway," Jack interjected. "If it's coming from the room across the hallway from Kim's, then it must be the lock room," Jack concluded. They fell silent for a moment, before Kim lamented, "Great, so we can't avoid light pollution because the damn owners left their closet light on." Grunting his way to a standing position, Jack started to make his way for the house. "I saw some keys in the cupboard. Let me go and see if any of them open the door," he offered on his way down the hill. Laying there next to Kim, Will noticed two things. Firstly, judging by the position of the light compared with the area of the house they had access to, the locked door led to not a closet, but a much larger room, a master bedroom at the very least. The second thing he noticed, moments before the light flickered off, was a dark shape moving across it, silhouetted by the brightness. "The keys worked," Kim cheered upon Jack's return. "No, they did not," he said, before looking up at the now dark house. "Oh, weird," he added. "It must have been on a timer or something," he ventured. Laying in bed that night, Will had far more trouble getting to sleep than the night prior. The darkness that crossed past the window, if not Jack, was probably just a bat, he convinced himself, somewhat unsuccessfully. And though a window so small wouldn't make sense for a master bedroom, it would for a master bathroom, he tried. The theory sticking, so long as he didn't stop to ponder why the owners would restrict access to a mere bathroom. All the while the metallic clanging of the night before continued, and Will did his best to not notice the distinct lack of wind on this perfectly still evening. The second day exploring Queenstown had the trio taking a fast-moving minibus down to Moakes Lake for horseback riding at Ben Lamont's ranch. The views were amazing, the weather fine but cold, and the horses well behaved. Will even found that on occasion he successfully distracted himself from the unease of the night before. Following this, the travellers headed back to Queenstown to visit an ice bar, but his frozen surroundings did nothing to prevent the cold sweat prickling at Will's back, nor did the cocktails calm his nerves. It was then an Italian dinner at a nearby restaurant before retiring once more to Morton House, a place Will now felt certain he dreaded. By the time the friends returned to their temporary home, the weather had begun to change for the worse. Cold winds had come, and with them brought rain. There would be no stargazing tonight, a fact that did not entirely disappoint Will. It seemed that for him, as beautiful as the marvels of the universe were, the dark house and unexplained room they silhouette were more than enough to spoil the view for him. It was back to Lord of the Rings then, and with Fellowship having been watched the night before, The Two Towers was first up in tonight's double feature. At some point during the epic's excitement, Kimberly excused herself to change into her pyjamas, a more suitable attire for snack munching and movie marathoning, she claimed. It wasn't until some time later that Jack, having noticed that Kim had yet to return, himself set off upstairs to investigate. $5 says she's fallen asleep, he quipped, arousing a non-committal grunt from Will, distracted by the ongoing battle for Helm's Deep. The movie having concluded, and his friends not yet returned, Will muted the DVD's looping menu screen and set off to investigate the whereabouts of Kim, and now Jack too. It was at this moment, with the TV muted, that Will became aware of the silence. The winds outside had died down, and the rains had stopped. No, near silence, for the metallic clanging had resumed, or was now audible, no longer drowned out by other sounds. "Jack? Kim?" Will yelled, as he made his way upstairs, finding himself at the summit staring down a dark hallway, lit only at the end by a light too dull to belong to the ceiling bulb, emitting from the doorway opposite Kim's room at the end. The mystery door. The mystery door that had been locked. The mystery door that now stood ajar, allowing a small slither of too dull light to escape. Shakily, Will forced himself towards the door. They're just being nosy, he lied to himself. They found their way in and are distracted by the owner's personal crap, he continued. That's why they didn't come back. An unconvinced Will stated aloud, without conviction. Pushing the door open, the room, still mostly dark, revealed itself, illuminated only by two small devices sitting on a table to the right. On approach, it became immediately clear to Will that they were Jack and Kim's cell phones, and just two of many more similar blacked-out devices lined up on the desk. Nervously, Will picked up Jack's phone and saw it to be opened to the house-sharing app for Morton's house, from which they had booked their stay. A glowing 5-star review had been left under Jack's name. The metallic clanging returned, and, using the phone screen as a flashlight, Will turned in the direction of the noises. To his horror, 6 silhouetted figures stood against the wall. The room's ceiling light flicked on and revealed them to be people, gagged and chained. 2 of them Will's friends, Jack and Kim. The chains made a strange metallic clanging as they struggled to move. Kimberly's eyes widened in terror, and behind him, Will heard the door close and lock.